Debris, molten rock, and people flying through the sky? Life without gravity is scary on a crazy scale. Let's find out what happens if we don't just break the laws of gravity though, but completely take them away. This is Earth. If gravity disappeared, in an instant, gravity is gone. You feel your feet lift off the ground. You watch as the people around you float up into the air too. Walking on air might feel fantastic at first, but this is not a fun, happy, sail away together into the sky scenario, because cars, buses, trains, and anything else that isn't locked down to the ground is also lifted up into the air. Animals too. So if there were ever a bad day to be visiting the local zoo, this is it. Oh, and there's another thing that isn't strapped down, and it's about to cause some serious problems for everyone and everything floating in the air. Water! From the oceans, from the lakes, from every backyard swimming pool, water rises into the sky. It hangs in the atmosphere like giant bubbles, or blue clouds if you will. Everything on Earth is held together by gravity, and so without gravity, nothing is safe. Imagine that the Earth's core is a massive magnet, and every single thing on our planet, including the air we breathe, is attracted to that magnet. Now imagine that we just turn the magnet off. That's pretty much what we're expecting in a world without gravity. You float up in the sky, propelled by winds stronger than those seen during Hurricane Katrina. If you remember the scene from the movie Twister with the flying cow, you're now living that nightmare in real time. Don't worry though, because for you, it will soon be over. After just 15 seconds riding an unbelievable floating carousel in the sky, you lose consciousness. What happens now? You won't be awake to experience, and for that fact, you can be thankful. But more on your impending doom in just a moment. First, we need to figure out why this is happening. What actually is gravity, and how can it possibly affect so many different things in our world? Gravity is an invisible force that pulls objects that have mass toward each other. Essentially, it's the thing that pulls two objects together. It's the reason why when you jump, you land back down on the ground instead of floating away. And it's the reason that the Earth orbits the sun. The sun's gravitational pull keeps the Earth floating around it in space. Anything that has mass has gravity. The greater the mass, the greater the gravity. That's why if you weigh 100 pounds on Earth, you would weigh just 38 on the much smaller planet of Mercury, and a whopping 253 on Jupiter. Gravity is necessary for life as we know it, and as you are now experiencing, if we take it away, it's nothing short of a disaster. Back to Earth without gravity, also known as the end of the world, you are now an unconscious ragdoll whirling through the atmosphere. You're surrounded by debris, millions of other people, as well as cars, buses, trains, dogs, cats. In fact, almost every animal on the planet is in the midst of being whisked away. Back on the ground, on the cold, hard floor you once took for granted, buildings that survived the first few seconds of a gravity-free world are now being swallowed up by the Earth's core. As gravity dissipates, the Earth, which was held together by gravity just like everything else, expands. You see, without the Earth having any gravitational pull, even the Earth itself, we're talking down to the very dirt that lurks beneath what we can see, has no reason to stick around. If the gravity is still in effect on surrounding planets and stars, then they will pull pieces of the Earth apart. And because these massive balls of mass can be found in every direction, the Earth is pulled apart in every direction by the planets and their respective gravitational forces. Even if Earth was completely absent everywhere though, the Earth would still break apart, simply because there would be nothing holding things in place. The Earth's core was essentially the glue that held the world together. Wipe away the glue and it would result in the Earth slowly crumbling apart, rather than being ripped to shreds like we're about to see. With gravity present elsewhere in the galaxy, tectonic plates, giant slabs of rock that make up the Earth's crust, move. This causes devastating earthquakes across the planet, wiping out cities in an instant. Now let's go back to when you first took off when gravity disappeared. But this time you're inside a building, and this building is one of the few that manages to avoid any natural disasters like earthquakes or tsunamis. Would you be safe? For a brief moment, yes, you'd actually be having a pretty swell time floating around the room you found yourself in. Except as the seconds go by, you'd begin struggling to breathe, because along with everything else rising away from Earth, our atmosphere is being sucked up into space, meaning the air, the oxygen you need to breathe is saying bye-bye to the world. So even if you're inside a building or in safe haven deep underground, there is no escaping the fact that the things you need to survive are slipping out of reach. Outside of our atmosphere, by the way, this is where your unconscious floating body is headed if you weren't lucky enough to be inside when this all started. Earth itself drifts away from the sun as you find yourself above the clouds. Once you leave Earth's atmosphere, it's game over. Unless you're securely strapped into an astronaut spacesuit, there is simply no longer a way to survive. Back down on what we used to call Earth's surface, Earth's atmosphere dissipates as it fades beyond the clouds. With our oxygen now filtering into deep space, every living thing on Earth dies within minutes. The tectonic plates continue to float away from the Earth's core, entire countries break apart, and slowly, planet Earth begins to shatter into pieces. Entire continents are lifted and drift toward the stars. All the water of our planet reaches the edge of space, and once it does, it is immediately vaporized. The entirety of the Atlantic Ocean, gone in the blink of an eye. The deepest trenches of the ocean, now dry as bone, hover up towards space, following the path of the likes of Africa, Europe, and North America. Chunks of magma and molten rock light up the sky with an orange glow as they edge towards space. The 750-mile-wide inner core of our planet becomes exposed as everything that was once glued to it shifts away. Planet Earth is pulled apart from the very center until nothing but dust remains. We're left with a void where our home once was. So, have you had enough of our world without gravity? Do you just want things to go back to the way they were? Let's say we were to inject gravity back into the world somehow. Could things ever return to normal? It's possible, but it would depend on just how long we had been without gravity. If the time period without gravity was around 5 seconds, you might be okay. You would plummet back to the ground and suffer some pretty gruesome injuries as a result. But as long as you aren't also the landing spot for one of the many objects now falling from the sky, you might survive, then live to lead a life filled with days appreciating the force that is gravity. What about the rest of the world, though? Well, when gravity was absent, the world's waters went wandering. Suddenly put gravity back where it belongs, and the water is unlikely to follow a similar pattern. Instead, the water would simply land in random places, causing massive floods and other damage to any areas of the world that haven't already been destroyed. Oh, and speaking of places that haven't been destroyed, if a city was lucky enough to survive the earthquakes brought about by the Earth's core expanding, they now have to roll the die once more, as when gravity returns, the Earth's core will return to its former position, and this will cause more earthquakes. Remember, this is if gravity was gone for just 5 seconds. The longer the planet is without gravity, the more irreparable the damage. Earth without gravity is a truly terrifying thought. So next time you lay your head on the pillow at night, or even drop a piece of food in the kitchen, take a moment to be grateful for the force that keeps things in place. And don't get yourself too worried about this doomsday scenario suddenly becoming a reality someday, because gravity isn't going anywhere. and its disappearance is actually impossible. Still, imagining what would happen were it to vanish doesn't just give us a fascinating work of fiction, it perfectly encapsulates just how important gravity is to our very existence. Take it away, and we aren't left with a whole lot worth talking about. If you'd like to give us a lift that doesn't involve dangerously drifting off into space, hit like on the video and consider subscribing to our channel. And if you found a world without gravity somewhat scary, have a look at this video about the most devastating natural disasters that really can happen on our planet. Thanks for watching!